Got it. I would like to now call the February meeting of Mount Hood Community College Board of Education. I declare a quorum for tonight's regular session. The following directors present: Diane,
Here.
myself, I'm here. William,
Present.
Larry is absent. Mohammed,
Here.
Timur.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And Andrew is excused. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Diane. I made the motion. Will made the second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. For public input, for persons wishing to provide public comments who are attending in person, please sign up by completing the sign-in sheet with your name, the name of the organization or group represented, if any, and a statement noting the agenda item or topic to be discussed to the board. The sign-in sheets are located on the table at the entrance to the meeting. For persons wishing to provide public comments via Zoom, we ask that you sign up by using the hand raise feature in Zoom. It is available at the bottom of your Zoom screen. When you are called to provide comments, please clearly state your full name, the organization, if any, agenda item or topic you wish to address to the board for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. As a reminder, the board will hear comments or objectives, criticism of college operations and programs. But comments about individual college personnel should be directed to the board chair or president outside of this meeting. We will now hear public input at this time. Roxanne, are there any sign-in sheets or hand raised for public input?
There. So we have Michael McCaffey. And then Hulani Durman, if you want to come up, all the three of you, and also Cheryl Johnson.
Just that one.
And we also,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
we also have Alan McGinnis.
Go ahead and have a seat and turn the mics on. Yep. Try it again. 2 fingers. There you go.
Hi, I'm Michael McAfee, and I'm here on behalf of a student, but it's not just the one student. Let me set my timer here to 3 minutes.
Have one going. Keep going.
Okay, I set my timer. Hopefully, buzz me out of 3 minutes. And the problem is online classes. The student trying to sign up for my Math 111 online can't come to in-person classes. Student needs to graduate. And this happens a lot. I'm looking at Math 111 next term, and my section is the only online section, and it's full with a wait list of 5, and most of the other sections are not even half full. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 hybrid, and 4 in person. And so I didn't know what to tell a student. That maybe you could talk to the administration. I have talked to administration. This is what I said. Maybe you should just contact the board. Well, I was walking by tonight and I saw there's a board meeting. And it's like, well, that's not right to tell a student to come up and talk to the board. I'm the one with the classroom. I'm the teacher. I'll come talk to the board. So I would like for you to take a look at online offerings. Yes, we need to have in-person, plenty of those, but we need to have plenty of online classes. They tend to fill, they tend to get waiting lists. They're in demand. Students want them. And I would like to see more offerings, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoever's ready to go next. Go ahead and turn it on. There you go.
Hi, I'm Pualani or Lonnie Derman, and I teach in the Natural Resources Technology program here at the college. And I'm actually here with Ellen McGinnis, one of our students in the NRT program. So I'll try to keep this short so that Ellen can speak. But I'm just here to share highlights of the NRT program and invite you to come and join us out in the field. So you're always welcome to drop by a class, or if you want to go outside, we're happy. We have some students who would love to take you on a tour, even of the little back 40 on campus or the little visual arts trail. We have lots of exciting things that are happening. But we are 60%, about 60% field based. So I have one of the most enjoyable jobs on campus because I get to take my students outside and do things like bird and connect with our community partners. Honestly, one of the highlights for me is the opportunity to connect students and our community members to one another and to engage them in meaningful projects. So just this term, we had students who did some reforestation plans for some of the private landowners, and then also had an opportunity to connect with the Mount Hood National Forest and commercial industry. Some of them have become involved with the local high schools, so our local K through 12 partners as well. So we're supporting them, serving on their boards and advisory committees, also even the Port of Portland. So any of you who like to fly, our students play a role in that. So we have a student who's actually serving as an intern on the wildlife management team that's helping to mitigate so that you don't have birds, colliding with your aircraft, which is always a good thing. And that's actually setting examples internationally. So it's pretty amazing that there are people coming from around the world to see what we're doing. And that's Mount Hood students and even some of the people who are now working in those supervisory positions are former Mount Hood Community College graduates. So there's a lot that can happen with the program. We want to thank you for your support. We're excited about the bond and the opportunities that will continue for students. And again, to really encourage you, if you want to get outside with us, you're always welcome. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Alan.
Thank you.
Good evening. Like Kalani said, my name is Alan McGinnis, and I'm a second year in the Natural Resources program. And with this short time, I'm hoping not to take up the full 3 minutes. I want to enlighten you all to what I've gained here in the past 2 years. Now, Natural Resources is a very broad title, but I can't think of a better name. I've spent time studying almost every cornerstone subject that can touch any job out in the field. I can almost identify every common tree, shrub, bird. I can answer questions relating to soil, watersheds, and even identify animal skulls. And there's so much that I've gained at my time here. Beyond lectures in a classroom, like Kalani mentioned, every day we get boots on the ground experience, putting what we learn into action. Just this past 2 terms, I've been leading a research project with a fellow classmate, collecting data on the back 40 acres behind campus. We have used trail cams to capture footage of multiple mammals. We've done avian point count surveys, and we're leading teams of other students to collect stream data. And now next week, we are presenting at the Wildlife Conference in Seaside with our research. But beyond the program, I wanted to mention my amazing instructors. Between Kalani Derman, Chaco Hunter, and Jason Pinkerton, they not only create a community, but they also give their students the best chance of success that they can. Between Pualani, who is always finding amazing opportunities, and now and sometime next spring, I will be doing surveys with the Oregon State Forest Entomologist. Jason always has his finger on the pulse of the career field and is constantly updating his curriculum so students have the best skills they can. But beyond all of that, they support their students in such an amazing way. Without that support, I would not be up here talking to you right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, hello, my name is Cheryl Johnson, and I'm here on behalf of the full-time faculty. I brought my bargaining team with me today to give you an update on the state of bargaining. We wish we had better news for you, but unfortunately, given the proposals that we've seen from the college, we anticipate that this won't be the speedy bargaining process that we had hoped for. The bargaining team from the college has proposed striking many of our long-term practices here at the college, including completely eliminating our tenure and evaluation work group and preventing our faculty senate the ability to weigh in on policy changes here at the college. The combination of these efforts would result in a stark reduction in the collaboration between the faculty and the administration, and would be essentially an elimination of shared governance as we know it at the college. As you are aware, shared governance is a bedrock principle of higher education institutions that exist to benefit the common good, as we believe we do here at Mount Hood. It is a way to make sure that there is shared buy-in and shared responsibility for the decisions that are made internally at the college. Decisions made through a shared governance process are typically stronger and more sound decisions since they reflect a diversity of views. Furthermore, the elimination of such provisions in our contract mirror attacks on faculty like we have seen in Wisconsin and Florida. Except here, it is not a response to a state or federal mandate, but your own bargaining team that wants to do away with our longstanding shared governance practices. The call is coming from inside the house. Your bargaining team will tell you these types of cuts are necessary because they are cost-saving measures. However, the cuts that the college has proposed thus far are essentially cost neutral to the college. Additionally, your bargaining team is not addressing timely issues that we are facing on our campus right now. We have asked for common sense ethical protections around harmful uses of AI. We have also asked the college to work with us in the face of unrestrained immigration actions that put our entire community at risk. To date, the college has rejected all of these proposals and offered no alternatives to these pressing issues. However, it's not too late to switch course. We implore you to urge your bargaining team to realign their priorities to address the problems that are actually facing this campus, rather than trying to strip us of our tenure and evaluation processes and our shared governance practices. We need to be working together to solve the problems of the current day and not create new ones, which will exacerbate the divisions within this college. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment is now closed. We thank everyone who provided public comments. We will now move to reports, correspondence. President Scari, do you have any correspondence?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, okay, John's there. Now we will move, well, I would like to invite John Waskoff, Deputy Director of Oregon Community College Association, to provide a legislative update. John, please proceed whenever you are ready.
Great, thank you very much. And I am going to try to share my screen here. So give me just a second. Okay, are you seeing the right view now?
Yes.
Great, okay. Well, thanks. Today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about OCCA advocacy, and what we kind of do around the legislative sessions and, advocacy on behalf of the colleges, and then talk a little bit about what's happening this session, and then take any questions that you might have. So, just broadly on kind of what some of the areas of OCCA advocacy. We obviously do direct legislative advocacy. I spend a lot of time talking to legislators in the Capitol. We do a lot of testifying on specific legislation on behalf of the colleges, and a lot of other direct engagement, whether it's to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission and other agencies that affect and governmental entities that could affect community colleges. We put together an advocacy toolkit that's online with talking points and other materials for students. We have, for several years now, had a group we call the Campus Advocacy Coordinators, and every college has one. And they are really tasked with helping. We put together statewide campaigns, particularly around the budget when we're in the long legislative sessions. And each of these people are help us to, whether it's recruiting students or faculty or other folks to come testify in the Capitol or to be part of our campaigns. These are the folks that really help us kind of spread the campaign, the work of all across the state. And then we do a fair amount of coalition building and stakeholder engagement, where we work with both labor unions, OEA, AFT, with the universities, with students, with the Oregon Community College Student Association, and other groups, local government groups like cities, counties. So we do a lot of sort of connecting between the different groups that we have, where we have common interests on different issues, and around advocacy towards our budget and towards other policy issues that may affect whether it's colleges and universities or elected boards. We do a lot of that kind of connecting between statewide organizations. And then I think, as many of you know, and some of you were at it today, we do legislative events in the short session. Our event is Career and Technical Education Day. We also do that in the long session. We do a legislative summit in the long session that's 2 days, and other events that are really around engaging our membership, board members, students, others in our advocacy efforts on behalf of the colleges. And then the last one I always say is sort of stop bad things from happening. There are a lot of proposals that go through the legislature, whether they're policy, whether they're budget cuts, whether they're changes to how the Oregon Promise or the Oregon Opportunity Grant are allocated. And so, part of what we do, and this is probably the part that's a little more reactive, because we do a lot of planning ahead for things like our budget ask and a lot of, long-term strategizing. But sometimes in a fair amount of each legislative session, we are responding to legislation that folks have put forward that sometimes we don't agree with or think could be harmful to our students or to our colleges. So very quickly, I just kind of want to talk about sort of the process and calendar before we get into some of the issues. So we began, we're in the February short session, and just, I think most of you probably know, but in the even numbered years, we have these short sessions that were originally created in case we have to come back and make budget adjustments, which they are looking at this session, because there is a potential large budget shortfall that I'm going to talk about a bit in one of the next slides. So that started on February 2nd. And then each quarter, the state chief economist gives a forecast on the state economy and how much revenue the state has. And so we're currently in the 25-27 biennium, that 2-year budget cycle. And on February 4th, the state economists let legislators know how much money they currently have and are projecting to have. So it lets them know if they have enough money to pay for the commitments that they made for the current biennium. And the original reason of these sessions, where we were going through a pretty significant recession, where the legislature had to keep coming back and making cuts because they wouldn't have the revenue they anticipated when they created the budgets. And so that is one of the exercises that we may be going through now. And then the session ends on the short session in March 9th. And I think, as probably some of you know, you're on a different cycle, but the filing deadline for the primaries is on March 10th. And that's really the official beginning of the campaign season for legislative and congressional and other races. And then in June, and I think, and really this work has started, and I put this in here just so that folks realize that at the same time that we're doing advocacy around the February session, we are convening colleges, business officers, presidents, others to start to build what will become our current service level ask for the Community College Support Fund, the largest source of funds that goes to the community colleges. And that work really happens now as we're in the thick of the short February session. The HEC is really starting, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission is starting the same process right now. And then they have to turn all their work into the governor by June. OCCA presents to the HEC on whatever our proposal will be in April typically. And then the HEC takes that work and they do proposals from the universities as well. And then they turn that into the budget that they recommend for the governor. So again, we are really already in that process. That has already begun. The business officers from every college, including yours, are starting to look at what your projected revenues would be and what your projected costs would be. And then we figure out what the state needs to, what contribution we need from the state so that those budgets will balance. And I say balance without cuts, without significant cuts or significant tuition increases. So just some of the major issues we're dealing with this session. I talked a little about the 25-27 budget. There was thought to be, as we came into session, a shortfall to the current biennium. That is less so. State revenues have actually been hanging in there pretty well. In fact, they were up a bit last time. But where there is a big hole that is about to be created and has been started to be created in the state budget is through HR 1, also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. It was that federal piece of federal tax and another legislation. But it will have in the next biennium and then the biennium after a significant impact on Oregon in reduction of funds that were coming from the federal government. And I'll talk a little bit about what those numbers are. But that is really what the state is looking at right now, is not so much the shortfall to this biennium, but that they're looking at a much, much bigger shortfall next biennium. And so if they raise spending, right, if they were to raise spending now, they'd be even further behind. Or even if they keep it at the same level, they're going to be even further behind as they get into the next biennium because they're staring down some pretty big shortfalls. And again, I'm going to talk about those in the next slide. And then the next issue, immigrations and custom enforcement. This has really become an issue with a lot of discussion. There are several bills, and we have weighed in and worked with sponsors to help make those work for colleges. And I'm going to talk a bit about a couple of those. And then transportation, you probably heard one of the biggest issues of this session was figuring out what to do with the transportation package that was recently passed. I'm not going to get into that. That's not so much an OCCA issue, but it is one of the driving issues of the session. And there is some talk of another walkout by Republicans as the Democrats are trying to move a ballot measure that would remove all the taxes in the transportation package that's currently slated for the November general election. The Democrats are trying to move it to May, and the Republicans are talking about potentially walking out if they do that. So that is why transportation is a pretty significant issue, because it will likely be the last thing that they try to deal with. So I'm just going to quickly go through, and I talked about sort of the budget challenges. And then, so based on some of the previous projections, we were about 63 million behind as they came into this session. The next one, the most recent one, put them at about 38 million ahead in state revenue. But then we will see between this biennium and 29-31 a $15 billion decline in federal funding that Oregon currently gets. Keep in mind, our general fund, which is separate, but is only $37 billion for all state funding for K-12, for corrections, for community colleges. So, this is almost half what our whole general fund is. So these are really significant amounts of money. And what makes it very difficult is 90% of the impact is related to the supplemental nutrition assistance program. So, that's food assistance for some of our lowest income families, and Medicaid, which is healthcare for low income folks. So, these are very difficult cuts for legislators to contemplate because these are basic needs for people. And so as they are looking at where they're going to have to make trade-offs, this is what is driving it. It's not so much that the state's in a recession, because it isn't, or that we're losing lots of state revenue. It's that there are these large cuts to federal spending that are slated to begin right after the 26th election. And you can kind of see through the numbers here. I don't want to read, I won't just read it, but for the general fund, we are in this current biennium looking at a loss of 104 million that will increase to 874 million and then 1.7 billion. So, right, these numbers, just as we go through, get larger in several areas. So the other thing, and this probably should have been on my issues list, is well, it is because this is part of the federal tax system. Oregon is one of only a few states that when the federal government, just as they did in HR 1, makes changes to the tax system, the Oregon does the changes their tax system in all the same ways that the federal government did. And you can see here, these are some of the big areas where Oregon, because we're connected, and this would be the amount of revenue loss for each biennium. But the difficulty is that for some of these, like tip exclusion and overtime exclusion, the federal government created exclusions for taxing tips and overtime. Legislators didn't particularly want to, Republicans don't want to disconnect at all, and Democrats don't want to disconnect from the things, I think, in particular that would hurt lower income earners. And so they really are looking at a package where they would disconnect from not these two things, but some of these things below here that are more corporate tax provisions that might go to higher income folks, that would get us more in the range of $360 million for the upcoming biennium. Not anywhere near those big numbers that we're looking at, but it helps. But fiscally it helps. OCCA hasn't taken a position on the disconnect one way or the other, but fiscally it does ease some pressure. So I'm just going to kind of wrap up here with some of the specific bills we've been looking at. And there are several, but because it's a February session, right, the number of bills that we have to deal with is much more limited than in a full session. In a full session, any legislator can introduce as many bills as they want, and some introduce really quite a few. In the short sessions, House members get 2 bills and senators only get 1 bill. So the world is much smaller. This ICE notification bill, this requires educational entities, colleges, universities, and K-12 to use their emergency channels to notify the college, the campus, or the community through like if you had a fire on campus, the same kind of emergency system that would go out to all students and faculty, that sort of thing. We had some original concerns about liability it might create. For example, if a college didn't know ICE was making an enforcement action, would the college become liable? And so we worked with Representative Sarah Finger McDonald, along with the universities, who was great at really trying to make this work for K-12 community colleges and universities, so that it wouldn't put us in liability, but would also create, I think, a higher level of comfort for our students, employees, and community. And then this, we also have this is another ICE bill that it does a few major things. One doesn't really affect our actual colleges because our public safety officers are not in this category, nor do they wear masks. But for law enforcement, such as police, federal law enforcement officers, they would not be able to wear masks, or it would be illegal in Oregon to be masked and not to have a readily identifiable sort of identification. We were concerned because it did create a private right of action against college employees if they were to help with an immigration enforcement, which is something that is already forbidden in state law. This is not something that I think anyone would ever seek to do, but we were concerned that it could create a right of action against faculty, against others at the college. That was removed, and so this bill really just will focus on the masking and the piece about identification. That we also had how this, I meant to put a cross and an X through this. There are a couple of bills that have already not moved forward. I'm shorthanding this as strike pay repeal. What this really is that there was a bill passed in the last session that does unemployment insurance for employees, in public sector, private sector, and it would pay them unemployment insurance. There was a Republican bill to repeal that. It did not move forward. There is a community college governance bill. This is a stripped down version of something that happened last session. We worked with the sponsor, Senator Lou Frederick, I think, to make this a lot more reflective of the way that community colleges actually operate, the fact that our boards are locally governed. It has some transparency pieces, but in the end, working with Senator Frederick, we got to a place where the colleges were not opposing this, where we did last session, because it did a number of things that we weren't comfortable with and that our board wasn't comfortable with. A couple of issues that you probably heard of. The Oregon Government and Ethics Commission came out with a ruling in the last several months that basically said that you all cannot get a meal before a board meeting. That was true. It would have been true for employees. You know, if you're at an in-service, employees couldn't get a lunch at the in-service. So we have been working with local governments on legislation that looks as though it's going to pass that would solve that issue. So we would go back to the understanding that we had previously, that those are not considered a form of compensation. And it is actually in state statute, our board members cannot be compensated. So we couldn't even create a policy to say this is a form of compensation, where we probably could with employees, although even that could potentially put the employee at risk. So this will deal with it very cleanly. There is also legislation that the Oregon Government Ethics Commission also made a very, very broad ruling on what was considered a public meeting. And it could be and it was getting to where it would be any minor communication that might even be a text to a board member that was not even necessarily work related, or, you know, to your board work. And the amendments that we've been working on will really, and you know, in a coalition, will, I think, restore this to a common sense understanding of what is considered a public meeting, while creating guardrails, because there have been some examples, not at community colleges, but some examples where there were communication between, let's say, city councilors, which is really where the issue had come up, that probably did cross the line. And, you know, we try to make sure, and through training and public meetings trainings, that never happens with our boards or our board members. But I think the legislation that will ultimately pass will be much more reflective of, I think, good common sense practices, but that also have some good guardrails. And then the last one was a student government bill that this really came from university students, out of a very specific issue that happened at the Oregon State University, and the students at the University of Oregon took it up. It would create a lot of definitions around student governments. It would create, it would kind of, you know, create a level of autonomy that our students and students at universities already have to some degree, but it would have taken it quite a bit further in a way that, even though we weren't in this legislation, for the university boards, would have really removed the kind of piece of fiscal responsibility that their institutional boards have. We were concerned because it also removed language that is in our part of the student government statute, that refers to recognized student governments, which is commonly what we've used in statute. And the legislation removed that, which we were a little bit concerned about, just because it creates confusion. And that bill, however, did not get a hearing and did not move forward. And we had sort of mild concerns about it, but it was not directly affecting community colleges. But we did have concerns about the removal of the recognized student government language. So with that, I will stop my sharing, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I will say one thing, just final thing about February sessions, is they move incredibly fast. The first 2 weeks, everything is really front loaded in a way that, you know, I've testified in multiple hearings, and, you know, in the first 2 weeks, and it just moves very, very quickly. So there's very little room for error or to make changes to things. But, you know, it's only been going for a few weeks, and we only have 2 more weeks. So we really are pretty close to the end. And with that, again, I'll close, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions?
I've got a question. John, great to see you today, and thank you for all your work. Just curious how, from your perspective and OCCA's perspective, how we as a board can continue to advocate for students and for our community in a really thoughtful way, given the tight turnaround of this session and the bills that you listed. I know we were in the building today advocating on behalf of students in career and technical education, but when I want to continue doing more alongside of you in that journey. So if you can speak to that just a little bit, that would be helpful.
I love that question. Thank you for asking it. So there are a few things, right? Like, I mean, it is part of what you were doing today, right? I think we had a great day with people in basically saying, colleges around the state, you just had someone come talk about it, are already having to look at significant cuts. And any further cut is going to be, extremely difficult for the colleges. I think one of the things as board members you can do is to help encourage and get encourage and support your campus advocacy coordinators, right? Support that work, support your president in that work, really support students in that work, because I think when we have students come to the Capitol and tell their stories, it really, really makes an impact, and legislators, really, really pay attention to that. So, I mean, I think those are some of the things. We also, we will do, we have a platform called One Click Politics that we will do campaigns. We have one running today through the end of the week that go out to legislators, where you fill in kind of, your address and that information, and then it sends it to your correct legislators. That's a smaller hit. It's not as impactful as like actually meeting in person and building those relationships, but that's another way to participate. This is more of an FYI. One thing I'm kind of excited about is we are starting up. We haven't had it since the pandemic, and then the Capitol went into construction, so we didn't have a meeting space. But we're starting a community college caucus in the legislature again, which again we had up until the pandemic. And so that's just a group of legislators who want to support community colleges. And at some point, not in this session, but when we do it in the large session, we will often invite folks from colleges to come be a part of presentations and to speak to the caucus. But that's not until the long session.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Timur Ender. I'm new here. My question was related to HR1 impacts. There's clearly a very significant impact of those budget cuts. And I was wondering if you may have heard any rumors or murmurs about revenue mechanisms that the state could do to minimize the impact of the federal cuts. Maybe it's a 2027 conversation. And it seems like the disconnect piece addresses some of that, but are there any other talks or conversations around mitigating the impacts of HR1?
There are all over the country. The problem, particularly for a state like Oregon, is we have nowhere near the tax base to just raise taxes and replace $15.7 billion, right? Again, like through our income tax, we are currently raising about $37 billion. And so, right, like the scale of these numbers are really, really difficult, because if you think about that, go back to the 15.7 billion, the disconnect is going to get us to about 350 million. And so that's nowhere near the total. And so I hate to say it, but there's just not the most direct way to deal with this problem is for Congress after the next election to hopefully walk back some of these cuts, because you're going to have states, and there are some states already talking about trying to mitigate these cuts, but it's going to be, Oregon could only really afford to do it for probably the lowest of low income. They're not going to be able to reach the levels that the Oregon Health Plan and that SNAP in Oregon is currently reaching. But I wish I had a better answer, but it is very difficult for the state the size of Oregon to come up with the kinds of dollars that the federal government can produce.
Okay, thank you for your take on that.
Thank you. One last call for the questions. All right, thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you so much, and have a good board meeting.
Thank you. All right, next, I would like to invite Jennifer DeMint to present bond updates. Please proceed whenever you're ready.
I just have a quick bond update. I don't have pictures for you because I can't do pictures until we start moving projects a little faster. But I did want to provide an update. But this last month, We had our internal steering committee meet at the beginning of the month. We had about 25 people in attendance. People were really excited, asked a lot of really great questions and engaged. So that was really exciting. And then yesterday we hosted the Bond Oversight Committee meeting. So that's the community-based one. Will is there as a representative of the board. We had perfect attendance, which I was actually surprised for a committee like that in the afternoon. But we had perfect attendance and people were really, again, engaged with finding out more about the projects, a lot of suggestions about moving forward. So that committee is going to meet on a quarterly basis. So the next meeting will be May, but the internal steering committee is going to be meeting on a monthly basis until things ramp up, and then we probably need to divide into smaller committees. So that's kind of been the highlight of our work around the bond this last few weeks. And we're also have an architectural and engineering RFP that just closed. So our next step is to get those architects on board and start parsing out the details related to the projects. So I'm happy to take any questions about the bond that people have.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions? I have one. Could you remind us of who's on the committees for the internal and the external?
So so it's not that easy to remember. So in internal we have like 25 people.
Oh, okay.
So sorry.
No
The
worries.
list somewhere. So there's like 25 people. We have representation from all of our employee groups.
Nice.
And then we have representation from all the different areas on campus. So we made sure that we pulled a mix of like faculty, classified, part-time faculty, part-time hourly. And then I made sure I had people from student development, health and PE, Maywood, like kind of all over campus as well. So we kind of got a good mix of just that one committee. Now the bond oversight committee was people applied for the position and the board approved those people. And I want to say there's 7, but without a list in front of me, I don't know that I could read and not miss somebody.
Yeah, sorry. That question was probably a bit of a surprise. I just wanted a bit of a refresher because it's been a while. So apologies for that.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Maybe just a comment. Maybe if there's opportunities during construction while those sorts of like interesting things are happening, if there's an opportunity for community partners to be invited to look at those constructions, it would just be a very special touch point for some of the groups that we interact with to be able to see a wall going up or a milestone in construction and be able to walk around with reflective gear and hard hats just to kind of look at how things are progressing.
Yes, that absolutely. That was something that came up in the oversight committee. We actually had people literally give me a hard hat. I want to go check it out. So that we know that there's interest. We don't really have anything. Well, we have a few little things that are finished now, so we could do a tour, but I'd also like to figure out if we could do like a before and after tour, because I think that would be like the oversight committee, some board members like to kind of like the bond tour that we did where we took people through some of our old science classrooms and then showed some of the nice spaces. So making sure that everyone that's engaged in this process like knows what the before looks like so that when the after there'll be like I think a lot more appreciation for it. So absolutely. And if you have specific community members, you can send them my way and we can make connections too.
Cool. Yeah, I think I just welcome the chance to meet with you one-on-one at some point just to learn more about the bond. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Last call for questions. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And the next one is you too. So next, I would like to invite Jennifer again to present the financial update on second quarter overview of budget assumptions. Jennifer, please proceed.
Okay. So I know you had, John already talked a little bit about budget. So I think I actually pulled some of those slides out and I will try to keep you awake talking about budget in the evening. I just have a few slides to give an update on the current year. Starting off with our current year revenue. nothing has really changed since last quarter when I came to you and gave a quarterly update on the current year, but I recognize that all of you weren't here last quarter. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through it. Apologies if it's a repeat for you. But on state aid, we have a slight decline from what we budgeted. So that's that $570,000 difference. And that's because our growth of enrollment last year wasn't as large as the enrollment growth statewide. So our enrollment growth was about 4%. The statewide average was just over 6%. What that means is the way our state support works is the pie is based on the total enrollment and we get a smaller piece of the pie. So because even though we grew, we didn't grow as fast as everybody else, and that results in a loss. Property taxes, we're still anticipating it to be very similar to what we budgeted. Tuition and fees are above what we budgeted, and that's resulting from an increase in tuition bearing classes. So we like to divide our enrollment into tuition and non-tuition. All of that enrollment gets us money from the state, but only some of it gets us tuition dollars. So our tuition generating enrollment is at 5%, and that's that difference. So you're seeing that $530,000 in additional tuition and fee revenue. So the net impact between those two swings is about $36,000, which is like in our budget, not a significant amount. So we haven't had to make any dramatic changes. But just to kind of give you an idea of where things are swinging on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, we're seeing very similar to what we adopted in the budget. We don't have any known swings or changes. We're anticipating materials and services to be about 2% underspent from our adopted budget because we're asking people to implement efficiencies and not spend things that they don't absolutely have to have right now. And then on personnel, we're also anticipating a 1% underspending there, and that's generally from vacancies and turnover as people move through the system. So jumping ahead to next year, hang on just a second. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything there. So looking at those revenue assumptions as they move into next year, our state is funded on a 2-year basis. This is the first year, and next year is the second year. So we generally know what state support is. Assuming that there's not any mid-year reductions at this point, I'm not necessarily anticipating it. But we do have a little bit less, again, because of our share. Enrollment in the metro area is not growing as fast as it is in some of the rural areas in our state. Property taxes, we expect to come in based on our historical trends. And what we've also built into our budget assumptions is tuition. So typically we have used our higher education price index as a guideline for tuition increases. And that is published annually by the Common Fund. And the purpose of it is to track consumer price index specifically for higher education. So it's not like what you would see CPI for groceries and gasoline and food and stuff like that. It's specific to higher ed expenses, and that one's trending about 3.6, 3.7%. So if we use that as a guideline for our tuition increase, we would be looking at a 3.6% increase, which is rounding to $4.75 per credit. The board ultimately makes the decision on tuition. So I'm specifically kind of bringing that up now to get you thinking about it. I believe we're going to bring it back at the March work session, hopefully, because we do ask the board to approve any tuition and fee changes at the March board meeting, which is the 18th, I think, because we have to have that tuition set before we start packaging financial aid. So that's why we kind of have that pressure to do it earlier in the year.
So is that both the in-state, international, and all other categories?
Yes, they're sort of indexed to each other. So what we'll usually do is if it's 3.6%, we'll increase each one by 3.6%. And I will bring a lot more slides on tuition and fees showing you kind of where the revenue comes from, because our out-of-state is pretty insignificant because any state that touches Oregon is considered in-state tuition. And so there's a whole lot of data to bring for that.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So on the 26, 27, so these are expenditure assumptions that just have gone into our base model. Personnel, so what we've built into the model is all employees would get steps or COLAs per their existing collective bargaining agreements. Employees that don't have a collective bargaining agreement, non-represented, would get a 3% cost of living increase. We actually built into the model a 2% reduction in materials and services. That's kind of that amount that we're seeing at the end of every year that's not getting spent. So we're trying to kind of squeeze that out so we're not making cuts when we have budget that's not being spent. Utilities, we actually are slightly down, -3%. I think we had a really large increase last year, but then we were able to do some repairs to pipes and some I can't even think what it's called, the watering, like when you irrigation systems. So we did some repairs there, and we've actually reduced a lot of our utilities because of the repairs. And then finally, grants and aids. So those are the tuition waivers. We built in our annual increase that is aligned with the projected increase for tuition. So what does this all mean? The current year budget had a $7 million deficit, which means that we're using our reserves for revenue to balance the budget. We don't have enough revenue. It's revenue plus reserves to cover the expenditures. When we roll the revenue and expenditures over with these changes that I just talked about, we still have a $7 million deficit, except we have less reserves because we've spent the reserves this year. So in order to maintain that 10% reserve target that we've been looking at, we would have to cut about $5 million from our budget this upcoming year. We have a policy, the board has a policy that requires minimum reserves at 5%, but we've been really diligent. That's really bare bones. It's about $4.5 million, $5 million. It gets us for about a month and a half if like all of our revenue stopped. So it is bare bones, but that's the policy. $5 million is about 5.5% of our budget. Even if we made $5 million in cuts in this upcoming budget cycle, we'd still be deficit spending by about 2.2 million. So still spending down reserves a little bit. Reserves buy us time, but they don't solve a problem. Each year we seem to be relying on them. So we keep talking about how we have this deficit, but we have to make changes. So we are working through changes, and I'll talk a little bit about that in future slides. But the longer that we wait to actually address the structural problem, I think it's creating some other issues with people not. I'll get into the other issues on my future slides too, but like waiting shifts us to being more reactive, right? Like the longer we wait to address it, then we're just reacting to problems and not being proactive about how we make changes. And just to give you context, a 10% reserve is $9.2 million. I always think that's helpful. So when we talk about our budget, 83% of our total expenditures are salaries. Cutting expenses likely means cutting positions. That's the unfortunate truth of most educational institutions. So just to give you an idea of the scale of $5 million in cuts. So I just want to very clearly say that we aren't actually planning on doing this. This is literally a scale exercise. If we look at the current distribution and average salary of all of our general fund employees and figure out what that allocation would be, we're looking at eliminating 32 full-time positions. So if you use that category based on our current mix and average salaries, you can see up there that what the impact would be to across our full-time employee groups. So it's a big deal. We're not talking about making less photocopies or taking out your own trash. This is looking at things that we're not going to do anymore and really more significant changes. A $5 million adjustment sounds manageable until we think about the fact that 80% of our budget is people. 5.5% solution doesn't exist in like 5.5%. We don't have like one area we can just cut off and be done. We're looking at having to distribute cuts across the organization or have structurally embedded operational changes. You have a question? You guys have question marks on your face, so I'm happy to answer if you want, or if you want to hold it.
I didn't know if my question was confidential, but I was wondering what confidential means.
Oh, confidential. So it's a group of full-time employees that we have that participate. They support management in collective bargaining. So they're not managers, they don't supervise people, but they're directly support. So like Roxanne, for example. So they're like some staff in HR that support bargaining, some executive assistants that support people that are doing bargaining.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
What triggers the usage of the reserve? Is it this discretion of your team, or is it the board or the president?
So we have a board policy that allows the reserves to go down to 5%. We have to bring a balanced budget to the board that the board budget committee has to approve in April. That includes the amount in reserves. So ultimately, it's the board's decision where we land with reserves.
But you bring it to us with the reserve already in use to balance the budget versus can we use the reserve to balance the budget?
So when we brought a budget for the current year to the board, it was using $7 million of reserve to balance the budget, and that is what the board approved.
Thank you. Good.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give a little budget adjacent conversation. I sent a survey out to, well, not everyone here because some of you knew, but I sent a survey out before the winter break that was part of a National College and Universities Pathways to Sustainability. So I've been trying to use this model to guide us as we move forward through organizational changes and financial sustainability. So the survey went out that's supposed to help measure our employees' perceptions related to financial sustainability at the college. Themes that emerged included shared recognition of our problems. So people generally understood shared recognition of our problems, but uneven understanding by the stakeholders of what that meant for us. Some common themes that came out were around transparency, trust, communication challenges, and constraints with our budget model and the culture of reallocation. Getting into that a little more detailed. So the general consensus that Mount Hood has seen us struggling but hopeful. So I think everybody understands that we have a budget problem every year, but we always seem to figure out how to navigate through it. There was alignment amongst top leaders about the severity of the challenge. So, but employees felt disconnected from that. They don't understand who makes the decisions or what our institutional direction is, and then gaps in connection and clarity. So constraints with our current budget model were identified, and this idea of like a culture of reallocation. So people say, well, we don't have money to do that. We have a $92 million general fund. We have to reallocate to be able to do the things. So people understand that it's necessary, but don't really understand how reallocation works. So this is kind of what came out of that. Some good guidance for the leadership team here about how we can communicate, how we need to pace through, what transparency means, right? When you go through a budget, because there's sharing information, but some information is like, you don't necessarily want to share it because it could cause harm. So trying to find those balances is what our executive team has been working through. So one of the philosophies that we've kind of taken out and are moving forward with is this idea of identifying what's mission critical versus mission supporting, right? So if you ask people on campus, everything that we do is aligned with our mission to some degree, but we can't do everything. So how do we try to identify what's mission critical and look at focusing resources on that first? So this is kind of how we work to define it with the things that directly impact student learning, program delivery, academic progress, is in alignment with our public mission. This is aligned with ORS's. Things that are central to enrollment management, onboarding, advising, retention, and completion, that support our ability to protect our major revenue streams, and then provide essential operating capacity, safety, compliance, infrastructure to support and enable instruction and student services. So we're kind of using this lens moving forward and working on identifying things that can be implemented right away. So things like non-critical spending, expenditure deferrals. We're also working on shorter term strategies. We've shared a link with staff and asked people to submit ideas. While we don't have a ton of responses, we do have some people are really engaging in the thoughtfulness around it. And then when we have a draft budget, we'll bring it to the board in the beginning of April. We'll also request feedback from staff, validate the feasibility of these ideas before we bring it to the board, identify risks, and evaluate through an equity lens, the things that we're proposing to change. This is really similar to what I just talked through, but like CTE and transfer instruction remain mission critical. That is very clearly spelled out in the Oregon Revised Statutes. We're looking for ways to maximize enrollment in existing sections. So, right, how do we fill up our classes with students without adding additional costs? Identify immediate opportunities, things that we can do right now because our budget is coming up right around the corner. And then looking at longer term strategies and how we engage and make sure that we're moving forward really thoughtfully with bigger impact themes. So what we need from the board, and this isn't necessarily right now, we're going to be talking about budget probably every board meeting between now and April. So we will bring a balanced budget to the board in April, but between now and then, it would be really helpful for input and thoughts about what the board's risk tolerance is. So thinking about risk in relationship to reserve levels, absolutely, like how much, obviously the lower the reserves, the higher risk we're willing to take on, but also the pace of strategic change as we make impacts on campus. Things are moved, disrupted. Do we want to be slower and more thoughtful and intentional, understanding that we're going to accept more risk by doing that? And then probably the more urgent thing, because we're going to be talking about tuition and asking the board to approve a tuition increase next month, is like, what is tuition's role in that budget? Right? Like, are we okay aligning with HEPI? Are we looking for more? Are we worried at market? And I will bring to our next meeting some comparators of like what our community colleges are doing, what our regional colleges are doing. So our competitors, if you will. But also if there's other information that you would like to know when we have that tuition discussion, please send it to Roxanne or Lisa or I, so I can make sure I can get that information together, and then we'll just start with a conversation in,
Yeah.
she's ready.
Yeah. That was the number that alarmed me the most, was that over $4 per credit. We haven't done an increase like that in a long, long time. And of course, it's one of the things that this board has held dear is to, keep tuition as low as possible so that our students can afford to find their dream.
So I will say I had the same reaction, but we have, and I'll bring a history. I have a history. So it's actually fun for alumni as well, because you can see what tuition was when you went here and what it is now. That's always one of Andrew's favorite things to do. But our tuition has gotten so large that a 2 or 3 or 4%, it's 3.6%. 3.6% of $128 is a lot more than it was when it was $70. So I think that $4.75 is just getting bigger, even though the percentage increase isn't. It's just our base has grown significantly.
So by that meeting, will we already know what the CCSF is going to be?
So we have the CCSF.
We
right
have
now.
it.
We
Yes.
know
Biennium.
what the total pie is, because the next year is the second year of the biennium.
Got it. So it would be the next year where we wouldn't know by that meeting. So we have to have scenarios
Yes.
for if we get it versus if we don't get it. And then we can alter the tuition increase or decrease based on that scenario.
Yes. And there is a possibility of mid-biennium cuts. I mean, you heard
Sure.
John talk about that. Based on the last forecast, I would be surprised if there's an appetite
Yeah.
to do that. But I don't think we can be looking to the state to bail out our budget for the next biennium.
Sure. So we'll have no unknowns by the time we vote for the budget.
Right, other than our
The-
share
yeah.
of the pie.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's why I guess that's why our share.
Changes throughout the year.
Yeah. We wouldn't know that our share of the pie.
We have
by
a
then.
good estimate. So yeah, there's a few factors in play right now around growth factors, but the pie is distributed based on enrollment for the previous year. So 40% of our funding is based on 40% of our funding for next year is based on this year's enrollment. So and not just our enrollment, but our enrollment as related to everybody else's enrollment at the other 16 colleges.
So if you've taken into account like the percentage of enrollment increases that we've been seeing post-COVID.
Right. Except we have seen significant declines in college now and apprenticeship. So it doesn't impact tuition, but it impacts our state support. So while we're growing and we're seeing great tuition growth on the revenue side, our state share is shrinking because we have lost that other revenue. So we're looking at strategies there. I mean, as we go through this budget thing, I just want to be clear, and we like the VPs just met for a couple hours right before the board meeting. We are looking at revenue strategies as well.
So, sorry, last question on the budget. Will you have, will we see different scenarios on different increase rates just to see the overall changes in numbers or?
Like how
Tuition.
much revenue?
Yeah, like if you increase tuition by this much, if we decrease, if we left it the same, if we increase it by $1 by 2, 1% or 2, just to see different. Yeah, just to see what where the big picture changes based on the actual change with different scenarios.
Yeah.
Thank you. Not a lot of work.
I know I have it already. We do that already.
Okay, and I don't know if this is already something that happens, but one thing that'd be helpful too is I can't, excuse me, I can't think in the terms of a per credit hour in terms of tuition increase, but if there's a way that to say if a person was to attend school here for 2 years or 4 years, here's what that would mean, a tuition increase, looking at it from that view. Is that possible?
I will bring it. So we do it annualized. So
Okay.
how we compare statewide with all the community colleges, we have a shared spreadsheet that we kind of do our planning and then our final on. And we do look at it per credit, but per credit can be misleading as well because we have all of these other fees that are per credit or per term, universal fees, technology fees, ASG fees. So what we do is annualize it and we say if a student was taking 15 credits for 3 terms, this is what it would cost per year. Trying to do it for their whole program is a little more complex because our students go at different paces and depending on the program, how many years it takes to complete it.
Thank you for your presentation and your work, Jennifer. I just, to Diane's point, want to say that $4.75 could literally mean the difference between a meal and a prescription or rent. So that is not lost on me. I remember being a student just a few years ago myself. So that is at the forefront of my thought process. I'm very interested in seeing revenue generation options.
Yeah. Besides tuition. Gotcha. Read that. Okay. So that is the entirety of my presentation. We still have that structural gap. Our revenue outlook's constrained, but we're looking for alternatives and looking at developing a path forward. And like I said, we'll be talking a lot more about budgets. So if there's information or ways you'd like to see information, like I said, if you can send it my way ahead of time, it's helpful. Because I have so many numbers in my head that it's hard. Like when you say, can you tell me who's on this committee? I think there's 7 people. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, last call for questions. Yeah, thank you for cranking the numbers for us. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
All right. It was moved by Will and second by Diane. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. I will now like to turn to discuss on the board policies. First readings to present is President Scary.
Thank you, Shatoya. I'm going to pull something up here for the board. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to take an opportunity, since we have some new folks on the board, to talk about our policy process as it relates to kind of our governance at the institution. So every year, we do a solicitation in the fall of proposal ideas or kind of a call for new policies or changes to existing policies. In the fall, we also get information from OCCA on legal changes. So updates we must do to our policies. From there, I send, actually the VPs work with me. We get the draft proposals put together. And these are sent to our 5 councils and ASG as part of our shared governance process. And each of them gets a chance to review the proposals and the changes, provide comment. And then that's collected, and in some instances, we have explanations for sometimes some of the changes. Sometimes we incorporate the changes, and so there's kind of a mix of what happens. And generally, if there's a lot of feedback and we make significant changes, we will push it back to the councils, because it's really important for us that folks see what's being proposed and have a chance to review it and comment on it. So after that review, it comes to the board as a first reading. And so what we will typically share with you is the policy drafts where we've highlighted the changes and sometimes include the reason for the changes. And then we will also include the worksheets from each of the councils so you can see their feedback on each of the proposals. We will also, I should add, if there's changes we've made from kind of that council proposal that made sense, we'll incorporate that in what we bring to you as a first reading. I'm going to pause and say we are not sharing any of those with you yet, because we did have some councils that didn't meet our timeline and we didn't have the feedback, and we thought it was really important that all the feedback is collected, compiled, reviewed before it comes to you. So we will be bringing that first reading to you next month. And just know we will also give you, we try to get those to you a week in advance, so you have a chance to kind of look through not only what the draft is, but also the feedback. And then if you have questions, you can reach out to myself or whichever vice president is involved for clarification. But then from there, so we do a first reading, you provide your input, and any thoughts on anything you're seeing. From there, that version is taken and posted to the entire campus. And so we give everyone an opportunity to comment, provide feedback on every policy proposal. That feedback is then collected, responded to as best we can. And then when we bring the second reading to you, which is the time when we ask you to approve it, that will include not only the first round of feedback, but the all campus feedback. And we'll share with you what we heard, maybe if we've made any changes, and present that to you before we ask you to adopt it. And again, I just want to stress that at any point in this process, there's a significant amount of feedback that changes the language significantly. We will roll back and go back to kind of the beginning of the process. So I'm going to pause there and just ask if folks have any questions on how this process plays out.
Doesn't sound like we have any questions.
Okay, so We will be looking to, we're looking at the timing if this is going to come at doing the first reading at the March work session or the full meeting. But you will get a notification for me in advance of that with all the documents to review. So we will keep you posted on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we will review the draft agenda for March study and regular session meetings. Thank you. Yeah, please note that this study session will be online only.
Shatoya, how long should we budget for this meeting for planning purposes?
Their estimate about like 2 hours, like what we do for our regular meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right. Anyone would like to add anything to the agenda for the study session? All right, sounding like nothing is needed to be added, and we'll look at our March meeting, board meeting. Oh yeah, please note that this board meeting is specifically the tenured meeting. That's pretty much it. Oh, and there is a reception. Oh, with the candidates as well. I'm trying to see.
So,
Okay.
can you repeat that? So faculty tenure reception? And it's not a Zoom meeting, it's an in-person meeting?
Yes,
one.
so it's an in-person meeting and the tenure reception is in person. And so,
Thank you.
yes, in the town and gown. All right.
So just to be clear, for the March 18th meeting, it's anticipated that we would make a vote on whether and how much tuition will change. Is that a fair assumption? All right, thank you.
All right. Any other things folks would like to add? All right. Thank you, Roxanne. We will now hear the board member and committee liaison reports. Please keep your reports to 3 minutes per person. And Diane, would you like to start?
As the representative to the board, the foundation board meeting. And most of my report was reporting on our new members and giving them an idea of who you are and, you know, how we've welcomed you onto the board. The reports from Jennifer are just quite remarkable with respect to the percentage of increases in donations and bequests and the amount that we have in scholarship funds. From my perception is that the foundation is definitely doing a really good job, and you know we're really fortunate in that sense. So it continues to grow. And of course, the next thing we're looking at with the foundation is the gala and auction that's coming up April 11th. So I'm hoping that you all will, you know, come, buy a table and invite everybody you know that would love to spend some money. And if you have any items that you could contribute for the silent auction, that would also be very nice. And Jennifer, can you tell me how you're doing with live auction items?
Well, we've got 10 so far.
10.
Live auctions, yes.
And you had a goal of 60 silent auction? All right.
Do we talk to you? Do we talk to you if we have things to offer for that?
Say it again, sir.
Do we talk to you if we have things to add to that? Okay.
Excellent. I have a very, yeah, I have a question that probably I should just ask you as a side, but so what's the dress this year?
Oh, I don't want to answer that just yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working. But it's gonna be fun.
Okay, yeah, well, I was just checking, you know, I have to do some shopping between now and then. Thank you. That's all for my report.
All right. Thank you, Diane. Will, you're next.
Thank you. This week actually has been a long week already, but it's been a really eventful month. I was able to join several of my colleagues in DC last week, advocating for student needs and the Pell Grant and workforce development. Had really great meetings with Oregon's congressional delegation, and just huge thanks to the Oregon Community College Association and ACCT for the work done to put that together. Attended the winter board retreat, really lively discussion around some of the goals and vision moving forward. Heard a really thoughtful and powerful presentation from Rashida around the climate survey and some of the outcomes that we were seeing in the survey results. So really looking forward to implementing some of those things as we move forward. Like Jennifer mentioned, attended the Bond Oversight Committee yesterday. It was our first meeting. It was really great, lively bunch of folks. So very excited to see that work continue, already moving forward and continue to move forward. And then had the opportunity to join President Scari and many of the folks on this board today at the CTE Lobby Day in Salem, meeting with many of our elected officials in the region. So lots of advocacy, lots of conversations, a little sore feet, but would do it again. So thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, you're next.
Thank you, Shtoya. Similar to Will, I had a great experience in DC advocating for our students in our colleges. A lot of great bonding time with other new board colleagues and staff and students as well from other colleges. The winter retreat really was a chance for us to also come up with our own understanding of what our shared goals might be for this upcoming year and work towards those. That was a great session as well. Lastly, I want to wish everyone a happy Black History Month, happy Lunar New Year, a blessed Lent, and also Ramadan for those who are practicing any of those. I myself are practicing Ramadan, and today is my first day of fasting, so I wish those who are practicing a very easy and blessed Ramadan. So thank you.
Thank you. Tamora, you want to add anything?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Just in my capacity as a community member, attended the Your Two Cents kickoff, which is an effort to bring participatory budgeting to the city of Portland. My entire district's within the city of Portland, so I pay close attention to what council is doing and that effort. This is a proposed charter amendment for the city of Portland, and if passed, would allocate 2% of the city's general fund to participatory budgeting. So it doesn't change the amount of funding. It just says instead of city council deciding 100% of the budget, city council now decides 98% of the budget and community decides 2% of the budget. It's not a budget cut. It just changes who determines the use of those funds. So that is a charter amendment aiming to be on the November 2026 ballot. They're still gathering signatures and they have, I think, about $900,000 more dollars they're trying to raise for their campaign. Again, that is a charter amendment that they're trying to put in. So attending the kickoff, there were city councilors from districts 4, 3, and 2 that were there. Other than that, I have an orientation with Lisa coming up on February 25th, and then had a mini orientation with Andrew this past Monday. The retreat was great. Just having the student climate survey as one of the first items that I'm coming into was just great to hear some of those thoughts. It's been a great privilege to be on the board and have really enjoyed the opportunity to work and learn alongside y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I had many things going on too. So I will start off with the Association of Community College Trustees going to DC, and we were able to see Representative Bynum, Representative Dexter, Senator Merkley, and Senator Wyden, and I'm speaking to them about student needs and our campus needs. And then right after that, well, the day I came back, I ended up going to the East 205 tax increment finance meeting and advocating for housing, especially housing for students within our area. And then after that, we had our winter retreat, which I had the privilege of facilitating a portion of that for my peers and had a bonding experience in that. And then today, we're able to go to the Career and Technical Education Lobby Day at the Capitol. And yeah, that was a lot of what I had going on. And next, well, I'll close it out by saying thank you everyone for providing the information that you have done for the month. And we will now hear updates from our advisory representatives. I would like to make a friendly reminder to keep your comments to policy and program matters only. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing your updates. Jeffrey, would you like to talk about student government?
Good evening, Board of Education members. As we continue through this winter term, ASMHC has been very active in trying to improve the student experience here on campus. Throughout the start of this term, we hosted our annual Finance Council meeting for next year's student fee budget. This week, ASMHC will be working on finalizing that budget, and I'm glad to say that this year there will not be an increase in student fees. On January 30th, ASMHC went to the annual PSU Student Leadership Conference. This conference gave us an amazing opportunity to network with other students from other colleges and see what they're doing around their campus. We also got to attend some amazing breakout sessions that they offered to help us grow as leaders. On February 11th, we had our Heartbeat Retreat in the Student Union. This event was just a fun event to help us spread some love for our students on campus. We had smoothies, handed out cupcakes, and Barney was there handing out roses. Altogether, we had about 200 students attend this event. Earlier today, myself and Leanna Navarro, our DEI representative, joined Dr. Scari, Will, Shatoya, and Andrew for the CTE Day down at the Capitol. We had a great time getting to tell our stories and getting to talk to legislators about, how important funding is for community college. On March 2nd, on February 25th, sorry, we're hosting our Pizza with the President event with Dr. Scari and some of you board members. I would like to offer the invitation for anyone who's able to join us at that event to join us. It's one of the student favorites, and we love to have you guys there getting to talk to students, and they get a chance to learn more about you guys and what you do as board members. On March 2nd, we are hosting a bond informational event. This event will give students a chance to learn more about what the bond process is, what the policies entail, what projects have already been done, what projects are going on right now, and what projects they're going to see in the future. On March 5th, we are partnering with Transitions Transiciones to celebrate International Women's Day. Each year, awards are given out to women representing the staff, faculty, students, and community members who lead in their community. This year's theme is women as culture keepers and looking at women in areas like STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We would like to invite you guys to give any nominations if you have any for this event. Starting next week, our candidates for student body president and vice president start. We have 5 candidates this year, 3 for president and 2 for vice president. We have our candidate meet and greet on March 9th and 10th, with the election following immediately after on March 11th and 12th, and the election announcement on March 13th. As always, thank you all for your continued support of ASMHCC.
Thank you, Jeffrey. All right, and now we'll hear from our advisory representatives. Sarah?
Giving you a moment in case you changed the order on me.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay, I noted that you were looking at your March board meeting agenda, and I do hope that you'll consider revising it to incorporate the 10-minute program spotlight series that we've been talking about having. The dental hygiene program is scheduled to attend, and they would really appreciate the opportunity to share their program a little more thoroughly than Natural Resources was able to do in public input tonight. As a good illustration of a healthy shared governance process, Faculty Senate, together with representatives from our Classified Association, had a deep discussion yesterday about helping students and staff be and feel safe on campus given our political realities, especially ICE actions. We have been collaborating with the Classified Union on this issue since fall term. For this meeting, we invited administrative representatives from diversity areas, marketing, public safety, and student services. The conversation was informative, collaborative, and constructive, and will help us move the campus forward in new ways in this area. I have a brief cybersecurity program highlight. I don't see my timer, which I was counting on, so will you just tell me if I'm close?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. So cybersecurity is excited to share that we've been recognized on programs.com's 2025 list of the top 20 best associate degree programs in cybersecurity. We are ranked number 8. And the quote says, "Your program stands out for delivering exceptional educational quality while providing an outstanding return on investment for students. This recognition highlights your commitment to offering a rigorous, accessible, and career-focused cybersecurity education, preparing students for real-world success." My faculty spotlights tonight are Danielle Davey from music, who you guys called out last time, but still. She is the state chair for the Women Band Directors Association. She was recently awarded the Outstanding Contributor Award from the Oregon Music Education Association. And in the last 5 weeks alone, she has visited 2 middle schools and 5 high schools for band clinics. Don Markell in HPE coaches for Barlow High School water polo, both JV and varsity, both men and women. Both men and women's varsity have placed in the top 4 at state each of the years that she has coached them, with 3 state championships in that time, 2 for women. At least half of these athletes have made MHCC a part of their educational journey, either as lifeguards at the Aquatic Center, credits during high school, or by attending MHCC full-time. Dawn also volunteers as part of the Blue Crush Aquatic Club. This is a club water polo and swim program ages 8 to high school that serves students in East County. Each year, they send at least 4 teams to the Junior Olympic National Water Polo Tournament. And the Blue Crush has hosted the Junior Olympic qualifying tournament for the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Hawaii at Mount Hood for the last 6 out of 8 years, which brings 250 to 300 athletes and their families to our facility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, and next we have Corey.
Good evening. It's going to take me just a second here, but I really appreciate the work that we've been able to do as the Classified Association with our full-time faculty partners. I think the conversation that happened yesterday was not only critical, but productive. It highlights how, as I think I've mentioned, we start to build capacity together. There's no one answer, there's no one person, there's no one solution. And in the conversation yesterday, Rashida had mentioned something about capacity and making sure, and this is my words, that your cup is full as you continue on this fight. And I was reminded of a quote by John Lewis, and I'm not going to read you the whole quote because I wouldn't deprive you of the joy of reading it for yourself, and I encourage you to do so. It's from his book, Across That Bridge, A Vision of Change for the Future of America. But you are the light. You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. And that's what this is about. This is us speaking up for our colleagues and our community members and trying to provide comfort and make them feel safe. A voice to the voiceless. And it feels overwhelming. It's hard to do. We all have full-time jobs, but every person who steps up is a little bit more light. The other side, or the counterpoint of that, is as you go forward, there are strong considerations that you're going to have to make. As you heard, there's a conversation around increasing tuition, roughly $214 a year for our students. I too was a student once. That's the margin. It happens at a time where food stamps are going away or being reduced, and all the supports in the background are being reduced. But for consideration, while it's not a proposal, out of those 32 positions that $5.5 million represents, 60% of them are the people who've elected me to represent them. 60% of them are often the first contact that come on campus and the last person that our students meet here on campus. And so as you're making these considerations, recognize they're not numbers. The students and what they're dealing with are not numbers, but neither are the staff who are helping every day to do this. And so to end on a note that's hopefully high at the end, we'll see if I can stick the landing. I beg forgiveness from my administrator colleagues as we go through and have difficult conversations. about layoffs. They're already happening. They're already being discussed. And I am going to fight vociferously for each and every one of my friends and colleagues. And it's not a binary trade-off. It's what's demanded not only me from my position, but I also believe it's what's demanded of you in your position. So please consider all of the impacts and recognize that you too in our community shed that light. And I hope that our conversation yesterday around ICE is an opportunity, not just for associations, but also the administrators who were there, who I believe are with us in this. We will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. All right, Marilyn, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. I'm here. I've been listening and appreciating all of you. I really enjoyed the board retreat. I felt like I got to have a sense of some of the board members' personalities. That was fun to see. And some of you don't know me, so I'm going to give you a really quick introduction. I am president of the Part-Time Faculty and Tutor Association. I actually started at Mount Hood in 91 as a tutor and in the adult basic skills program teaching GED classes. And I, within a few, I had a master's and I had taught for 18 years at Parkrose High, but the position that was open was a tutor position and I enjoyed it. And I've continued to enjoy working in that program and with those students who, need that additional help to get that degree equivalence in order to have some doors open. So that's basically who I am. Last week did have the open house on Wednesday and Thursday. I was pleased to see, I think it was 2 or 3 people who had never been to the PFTA office showed up. And I always think that's a good thing for people to discover where we are. And also, was able to distribute some hard copies of the contract. While it is accessible online, some people want to have hard copies, and thankfully, Human Resources makes those available. People can get them from HR, but in an event like this, or when I participate in the new employee orientation, I also like to have hard copies in case people want to have them. I think that the discussion about finances is a tough one. Jennifer gave us some good information. I want to salute, I want to honor, Will, what you said about being very interested in seeing revenue generating options. And while I understand that figuring out how to generate that much revenue could be tough, one of the things I've been thinking during this meeting is, what is it that our 16 colleagues, those of which who have had even better increased enrollment, what is it they're doing? Is there anything we can learn from them? Is there anything we can apply? And I, again, I already said it to you, Will, but again, okay, this is my way in the classroom. Hey, Will, here's a virtual high five for you. Way to go. So I just hope at some time in the near future, we'll get more information about what it is that is happening that is enabling some community colleges to have even greater increases. I think it's nice to end on a high note, but I also want to be realistic that I want you to know that in my fall term class, and I think I'm going to say this publicly for the first time, but I consider myself, what is the phrase I came up with? It's like not retired, but on the way to being retired, because I'm only teaching fall term now. And I mean, I've been teaching for over 50 years, so I'm getting pretty close to that official retirement time. But anyway, the piece I wanted to share is that in my fall class, I ended up having a number of people who as ICE became closer, stopped coming to school. Now, these people were registered, so I'm not saying that that's the solution per se, but it is a reality that I experienced. I ended up with, and this is so different from normal, I ended up with my numbers of students at the end of the term was probably a quarter of what I started with. And that's dramatically different from other years. So, you know, what can we do to generate revenue? I'm definitely supportive of that. I understand what Corey is saying about our employees being some of the first people, our classified employees being some of the first people that students see. I also know that in order for students to stay at Mount Hood, they've got to have a good educational experience in the classroom. And so both our full-time and part-time instructors are very important in that regard as well. So anyway, not looking forward to the future financial discussions, but you know, I'm not gonna be like an ostrich and tuck my head in the dirt either. You know, it's what has to happen. Anyway, thank you all for your engagement, and you know, let's have a good rest of the year.
Thank you, Marilyn. All right. We will now hear updates from our advisory representatives. Oh, sorry. All the way at the bottom. The executive leadership has included their monthly division reports in the board packet, and we would like to provide an opportunity to share any new updates that may not be included in the written report. John Hamblin.
Did not have anything.
All right. And Tina. All right. Thank you. Jennifer Bomer. Great. Jennifer DeMett. All right. Thank you, everyone. President Scari, would you please share your president's report?
Yes, thank you, Shatoya. So what I've been working on this last month is included in the board letter, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but please let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer them. And instead, I'd like to take my time tonight to express my sincere appreciation to each of you for your engagement in the work of the college and your advocacy you've been doing on behalf of our students and our broader community. I have to say the last 2 weeks have been amazing and personally very, very energizing. Your leadership at the national level, where you were advocating for Pell, for funding for workforce, and protection of Title II investments in adult basic education and English as a second language. Your voice was strong, and it made me proud, right, that you weren't just supporting Mount Hood Community College students, but also these issues that impact all of the students in Oregon's community colleges. I want to echo some of Marilyn's comments, the engagement at the board retreat. Personally, I found very helpful in providing clarity for me on your priorities, and also how they will give us guidance on where you would like to see us focus or focus our information towards you in the future. From student success to student life and the bond We look forward to our future collaboration on how we move these things forward. And then lastly, time we spent today in Salem was amazing. My feet are tired, but it was a lot of fun. And you have to know that your advocacy matters. In addition to each of the personal stories that our board members offered, I want to note our students also did an amazing job about sharing how Mount Hood Community College has impacted them and their journey. And collectively, this presented a view of Mount Hood Community College as an institution that not only serves our community, but also creates committed alumni who go on to be community leaders. And I just have to say, it's pretty cool. Now, we heard from John. We're going to need to continue to be diligent on our messaging around protecting our current service level, not just this year, but definitely going into the future. And I do think we are well positioned based on our economic impact and how for every dollar of public funding we get, we're able to do a return of $1.30. And so I think we need to keep driving that message home and not have people questioning if community colleges actually do workforce development. Now, you have to know that your presence matters. It signals to our students and to our employees and the region more broadly that this college is governed by leaders who are informed, invested, and deeply committed to our mission. And when you speak about the value of community colleges, you do so with credibility and authenticity. And I love hearing you share our student stories. And at the same time, here in the boardroom, you're asking hard questions. You push us to be better. And that combination of support and accountability is really a hallmark of strong governance. So in a time when higher education is facing both opportunity and scrutiny, your leadership provides clarity and confidence. You help ensure that our decisions remain student-centered, mission-driven, and aligned with the long-term health of this institution. So thank you for your time, your preparation, and your thoughtful deliberation, and your advocacy. It's such a pleasure to work alongside you in advancing the promise of Mount Hood Community College and what we offer our community. Together, I think we are making a meaningful difference in the lives of the communities we serve, and I can't think of a better way for us to spend our lives. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to speak for the board. Thank you for your leadership, President Skari. All right. And last reminder, Roxanne gave us little cutouts of events that will be happening in the coming weeks. So definitely look at that and please attend where you can. And also happy Black History Month. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
All right. We have a couple of moves in a second. Mohammed moved it first and Will second it. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. It is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.